What do popular people like Jussie Smollett, Hillary Clinton, and Brian Williams have in common? Well, all of these people had situations where they tried to look like the victim of a terrible situation. Jussie Smollett claimed that he was attacked by a group of white supremacists, and the situation was labeled by some as a modern-day lynching. Hillary Clinton claimed that she arrived under sniper fire in Bosnia. Brian Williams claimed that he was almost shot down in a helicopter. All of these stories were presumed to be 100% true until more facts came out and were later proven to be 100% false. And today, we will be looking at another story that has a lot of holes in it. This episode, we will look at all the evidence, and from that evidence, you will be able to answer the question, did AOC lie? This is the Debunked Docket. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Kyle Dockery with the Debunked Docket. We are here with our very second episode of the Debunked Docket. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are excited to be here as well. So before we dive into this sort of story that we have, there is a very simple fact about humans that all of us must understand. We as humans feel fear. Every single person that I know, and that you probably know, has felt fear at one moment in their life. One huge example of when our country and also a lot of people felt fear was on September 11th, 2001, as it was probably one of the scariest moments in United States history, maybe even world history. Seeing airplanes fly into a building with people inside, both the building and the plane, was a terrifying experience for everyone to witness. Whether you're on the ground or whether you're watching it on TV, everyone felt a sense of fear. People that were working in different buildings that are considered to be skyscrapers in New York or Chicago that day were probably more terrified that there may be another attack. However, this time it would be on their building. Many people that were working in so-called skyscrapers, even though they were hundreds or thousands to even states' widths away from ground zero, were still probably very afraid. It is a fear of the unknown that takes over us. Now, the experience of a person who was in the tower on September 11th that escaped the blaze, including the firefighters and the rescue workers, are going to be way different than the people that were working in a skyscraper in Chicago or even another skyscraper in New York that wasn't affected by the attack. It would be a terrible thing for someone that was working in a skyscraper in Chicago to tell the news that they almost died on September 11th because of these terrorist attacks. This clearly would make absolutely no sense because they were miles away from the attack that happened, and it would take away from the experiences of the people that actually survived the September 11th attacks. With all that being said, we can understand how people can feel afraid in traumatic situations, even if they are far away from that specific situation. This leads us to talk about what happened on January 6th, the day where idiots decided that it was their mission to smash into the Capitol building and spread fear into the representatives inside the building. One of those people that were in the complex of the Capitol, which we will talk about later, was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I believe that she had a right to feel fear, as she didn't know what was going to happen in the situation that she was in. It was once again the fear of the unknown that we already talked about, and it took over AOC. So while AOC is able to feel fear during a traumatic event like this, the way that she tells her story of these different events makes it seem like her situation was a lot worse than what it actually was. Our story officially begins on January 6th, as during the time where rioters were breaking into the Capitol building, AOC was in her office when she started to hear loud bangs on her door. Here she is describing this in her own words. Take a listen to this.
And I go back to scrolling through lunch options for what we're going to order when all of a sudden I hear boom, 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 boom on my door. And then I hear these huge, violent bangs on my door and then every door going into my office. Just bang, bang. Oh, shoot. See, look, I'm banging over again. Bang, 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 bang. Like someone was trying to break the door down.
So of course she gets kind of freaked out about this because the person on the other side wasn't like, oh hey, it's Ilhan Omar, can I come in? We're gonna talk about progressive issues. No, there was nothing, just a lot of banging on her door. So AOC staffer told her to go, run, hide. So she ran into the back of her office, which has a closet and also a bathroom. And she ran into the bathroom. While AOC was in the bathroom, she is able to see through the crack of the bathroom door and see that there is a man in her office. And he keeps yelling, "Where is she? Where is she?" AOC then explains her thought process at this moment. Here's how that sounded.
And then I just start to hear these yells of, where is she? Where is she? And I just thought to myself, they got inside. And so I hide behind my door like this, like I'm here, and the bathroom door starts going like this, like the bathroom door is behind me, or rather in front of me, and I'm like this, and the door hinges right here, and I just hear, where is she? Where is she? And this was the moment where I thought everything was over.
Of course she's freaked out, as there is someone that she doesn't know in her office. However, in the video, she says, I thought they got in. Now, who was this they that she was talking about? Well, to us in the audience, we may assume that she means insurrectionists. Technically, she is talking about the insurrectionists, as at that time that might have been what she was thinking was happening. And once the media found out about this, they instantly jumped into action, as the media started to claim that AOC stared down an insurrectionist in her office. Nancy Mace, a representative that works 2 doors down from AOC, pointed this out on Twitter, as she posted a Newsweek article that claimed Ocasio-Cortez said the rioters actually entered her office, forcing her to take refuge inside her bathroom after her legislative director told her to hide, hide, run, and hide. The article also says that as members of the mob banged against the door, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez believed this was the moment where I thought everything was over. Nancy Mace also explained that no insurrectionists were in the building or even in the hallway, but of course we'll get to that later. Now we know from the video that we just watched that this was a lie coming from the media, as AOC never said the word rioters, insurrectionists, or even protesters. However, the use of the word they made us as the audience and even the news media believe that an insurrectionist was actually there in her office. So it looks like in this situation, AOC was not lying. However, it was the media that lied in their article about AOC. Although you could make the point that AOC was being manipulative in her storytelling, as she was trying to build tension to make her story sound better, and in doing this, it made people believe in something that wasn't true. It was disingenuous at best. Who was this mysterious man in her office? Well, it was actually a Capitol police officer, and once this information came out, or Newsweek watched the rest of AOC's video, they had to change the story. So anyway, back to the story at hand. AOC is still in her bathroom, and this officer is still yelling, "Where is she? Where is she?" when her staffer calls out to AOC and says everything is okay, and this is when AOC finds out that it is a Capitol police officer. She explains that the officer was acting hostile to her, and she felt threatened by the officer, but to me I think that this officer was probably extremely stressed as he was trying to find AOC and make sure that she was 100% safe. However, I do think it would have been a better situation, or at least smarter, for the officer to announce himself and say that he is a Capitol police officer, so then AOC and her staffer knew who it was and weren't scared half to death. Anyway, the police officer tells them to leave this office building and go to another one. We later find out that this was the Longworth building, which is where AOC hides with Katie Porter, which we'll get back to that later. And they were trying to do this because they were trying to clear out the building to make it safer for everyone. AOC explains in her video that the officer didn't go with them, so her and her staffer were alone, on their own. But AOC has a plan. AOC claims in her video that she knows that there are representatives on the 5th floor where they can go and seek refuge. So they run up to the 5th floor and knock on some doors and no one is there. Then AOC remembers that there are more people on the ground floor, so her and her staffer once again race down the stairs. And AOC explains that as they're going down these stairs, the protesters are getting louder and louder, and that the hinges on the doors were breaking. Take a listen to this.
Anyway, so we start running down this spiral staircase to the first floor. And we get to the first floor and we hear the yells getting louder and louder, like, rah, 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 you know, just like I hear like the hinges cracking, you know, it just feels like you can hear all of this yelling and screaming. And as we're going down this spiral staircase closer to the street level, like the yells only get louder and louder and louder that you hear.
However, there is a very huge problem with this claim, as AOC and her staffer were in the Cannon building, which, according to my research, was not even touched by these rioters. According to pictures like this, we can see that AOC and her staffer are actually nowhere near the insurrectionists. Here is also an aerial view to see how close the buildings actually are together. So we can see that the buildings are closer. It's not like they're 15 miles away from each other. And according to Google Maps, it is about a 0.2 mile walk to get from one to another, or about 3 minutes. This means that the insurrectionists weren't super far away, but they were a pretty good distance away from AOC and her staffer. We also have to remember that these rioters' focus was 100% on the Capitol building, and not on the Cannon building, and there is no evidence or pictures of the Cannon building being destroyed by these different rioters, or any building for that matter. According to Curb.com, they laid out exactly where the rioters went. You can see in this picture all of the yellow markers were where the rioters went to. As we can see from this image, the main focus was on the Capitol, and there are no markers outside of the Capitol building, except for, of course, the first one, which was outside the Capitol building because that's where they started out. Once again, I want to make it very, very clear that on that day, there were no other buildings that were attacked or even touched by these different rioters. Trust me, I would know, because I researched this over and over and over again on Google, Bing, Wikipedia, everything, and I found absolutely nothing. No videos, no pictures, or any evidence of any other building that either AOC or any other representatives being in was breached or destroyed. If you have a source, please let me know, and I will change this immediately. But as of right now, I have nothing that tells me anything different. This leads me to believe that AOC lied about this moment, or maybe she thought that she heard protesters, but they were really Capitol Police officers that were trying to block the doors and they were shouting out orders or something like that. But we can clearly debunk that no one was trying to get into her office building. So now after this video by AOC was created on her Instagram page, people were cracking up about it on social media, as people were continuing to claim that AOC was nowhere near the Capitol when this happened. It reminded a lot of people of that time when AOC went to an abandoned parking lot and cried because she was supposed to be looking at migrant children or something like that. People were also comparing her to Jussie Smollett, who I talked about at the very beginning of this episode. There was also a picture of AOC with President JFK talking about how she survived a near-death experience. Yes, these are all funny memes, and I can add more right here because I think they're very, very funny and also amusing. Well, there was someone that didn't find all of these memes very amusing, and that was AOC herself, as she jumped on Twitter to fight back, as AOC sent out an email to her supporters demanding that her supporters use the tools of Facebook and Twitter to ban people that were posting tweets that said AOC was lying, or simply pointing out the fact that she was nowhere near the Capitol building when the attack actually happened. AOC herself even got in on the action as she started to respond to some of these tweets that people were pointing out that she was nowhere near the Capitol building, as Jack Bosepic posted an image with the title, AOC wasn't in the Capitol building during her near-death experience. As we talked about, this was 100% true, as AOC was in the Cannon building, so AOC had to defend herself, and she defended herself by saying that the attack on the dome was an attack on the entire complex, which is where the Cannon building actually was. As she wrote, "This is the latest manipulative take on the right. They are manipulating the fact that most people don't know the layout of the Capitol complex. We were all on the Capitol complex. The attack wasn't just on the dome. The bombs that Trump supporters planted surrounded our offices too." Okay, so there is a lot to unpack here. As first, we're not 100% sure if it was Trump supporters that put the bombs anywhere. Second, the bombs were reported to be at the RNC building and the DNC building. From AOC's office, the RNC headquarters was 2 minutes away, and the DNC headquarters was 7 minutes away. So if the bombs did go off, then her building, more than likely, would not have been damaged at all. So the bombs being a threat were not a real threat to AOC at all. Also, along with this, we already looked at the distance between the Capitol building and the Cannon building where AOC was. So Jack Bosepic responded to AOC's tweet by writing, "Fact check," and posted a picture of the Capitol building like the ones that I put in the video earlier. AOC responded back by saying, "This isn't a fact check at all. Your arrows aren't accurate. They lie about where the mobs stormed and place them further away than it actually was. You also failed to convey multiple areas where people were trying to storm. It wasn't one. You also failed to show tunnels. Poor job all around." Now, I think that these arrows were probably drawn really fast, and it was just a general area of where AOC was and where the building was. Along with this, in that tweet, AOC mentions that there is a tunnel system that connects all the office buildings around the Capitol building to the Capitol building. This way, representatives can get to the Capitol faster. This tunnel system is real, and it does connect all of these buildings together. Now, to give the benefit of the doubt, there were some plans of these insurrectionists had to use the tunnels to attack members of Congress. According to the Wall Street Journal, the FBI revealed communications among alleged Oath Keepers. All members are in the tunnels under the Capitol. Seal them in and turn on the gas. This, of course, is a terrible statement and something that I am glad did not happen at all on January 6th. It looked like from all of these reports that the rioters wanted to use the tunnel system. However, they never did. There is no evidence that the rioters were moving through the tunnels to, 1, trap representatives, or 2, to go into different buildings to attack other representatives. It seems like the only people that were moving through these tunnels were representatives. As going back to our story, when AOC was told to leave her office building, she used these tunnels to go into the Longworth building because the Cannon building was being evacuated to protect the representatives inside. So, in that trip, she never saw any rioters because there were no rioters in the tunnels. They never used the tunnels. So AOC was able to peacefully move through the tunnels and make her way to the Longworth building where she reached Katie Porter's office. This is of course the next part of our story, as when AOC and her staffer entered the Longworth building, AOC banged on the door. And AOC was like, "Can we come in here?" And Porter was like, "Yes, you can." Then it was reported by the New York Post that AOC started to open up cabinet doors and rummaging through the office. On MSNBC, Katie Porter explained the situation. As Porter said, "I was like, can I help you? Like, what are you looking for?" It was reported that AOC told her, "I'm looking for a place to hide." It was also reported that Katie Porter was able to calm AOC down as she was acting a little bit crazy, and it seemed like she needed a reality check. Now, the story of AOC in Porter's office tells us a lot about the situation at hand. If the situation at that building that AOC and everyone else was at was so dire, and there was a possibility that both Katie Porter, AOC, and all their staff members were going to die, why was it that Katie Porter was so calm and acting like almost nothing was happening? It was also reported that she was drinking coffee at this time, just relaxing, having an average day. There is a possibility that Katie Porter might not have known what was happening outside, or she could have realized that in this situation that was going on, she was 100% safe because she was a safe distance away from the situation. Luckily for everyone that was involved in this story, this was the endpoint, as AOC and Katie Porter, along with all their staffers, were given the all clear and they were able to leave the office building and go home. To be honest, I'm very glad that AOC and other representatives were saved in this situation, as it would have been terrible for anyone to be in a situation where they were staring down an insurrectionist that wanted you dead. And I honestly don't wish that on anyone. However, in the end, we can learn a lot from this story. We learn that people are allowed to feel genuine fear when they are in traumatic situations. We also understand that AOC was nowhere near the Capitol when this situation happened, meaning that she wasn't in as much danger as maybe the representatives that were actually in the Capitol Dome building. We know for a fact that the stories of these representatives that were actually in the dome when this happened were going to be different than AOC's story, or even a Capitol police officer's story that were outside trying to prevent people from coming into the Capitol. And we also can't forget about the 5 Capitol police officers that lost their lives on this day trying to protect the Capitol building and the representatives inside. We cannot let AOC's exaggerated story take away from the stories of the men and women that died on that fateful day. That is disrespectful to them and their honor to peacefully serve. So now it's up to you, dear viewer. You have most of the facts, and maybe if you want to go and look up more facts, you can. But in all honesty, it is up to you to decide if you believe that AOC was lying or not. I can't make that decision up for you. I just give you the facts. And that's what we do here on the Debunked Docket. I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Debunked Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving, goodbye.